The story begins 3 million years ago on Earth, during the dawn of humanity. Our protagonist was there, just an Australopithecus, who loved to hunt like the others. But strangely, he didn't die. A bubble above him split open, and infinite eras passed by. Time had no effect on him. What kept him going all this time was the hunt, combat, and struggle. That was his only joy for 3 million years. His body evolved to suit battle, relying solely on his physical strength. He became a god. He holds the top spot in the divine realm and is called Earth God Mu. He was responsible for the planet Earth. There came a time when he was bored. He suddenly stomped on the ground with force, which affected the sanctuary of the gods, or the divine realm. A strong wind from Mu struck the realm, disturbing demons and angels alike. At that time, Lucifer, responsible for the planet Elmer, was standing and suddenly felt the tremor. He became irritated and said, "Here we go again." He is the god of Elmer, Lucifer, holding the second spot in the divine realm. Mu was bored because he felt he had already fought everyone worth fighting, and there was no one left who could challenge him. He was very frustrated since it had been so long since his last fight. He never thought being too strong could be the problem. While reflecting, he realized the truth was that he couldn't fight because he was too strong. And so he decided immediately to get weaker. This idea came to him after 1,000 years, and so he felt very clever. He concluded that there would be no shortage of opponents to fight with the weak body of an Earthman. He stood up and called his subordinate, Yong, a dragon. Yong flew towards him and landed on the ground before him. Yong is a very tall dragon. He's the chief secretary of the supreme god. He then asked Mu why he had been summoned. Mu simply said, "While I'm gone, make sure to take good care of things." Yong immediately activated the law of the absolute being. 2 magic circles appeared in each of his hands, and chains came out of them. Yong wrapped the chains around Mu's body. "Where are you going, master? There's a meeting of the gods soon. What are you planning to do?" Yong asked. Mu took a step and pulled Yong along with him. He then asked Yong if he was working part-time. Yong kept begging him not to go, as he didn't know what to do. Furthermore, he didn't know how to explain it at the meeting, since he had no idea where Mu was going or why he was leaving. He was worried because he believed everyone would probably take out their frustration on him. He complained that he felt so useless, and this irritated Mu. Mu broke the chain and asked Yong if he wanted to fight him. Yong was sweating and nervous and just told Mu to take care of himself. Mu then informed him that he needed to leave. He touched the earth while wondering which weak body he would possess. As he touched the earth, he heard voices of humans complaining about their lives. Someone then said, "If there is a God, then God eats trash. If you're annoyed, send me to another world." Mu was shocked to hear this. He then smiled broadly and decided to choose that human, saying, "As a bonus, I'll grant your wish." He laughed while Yong stood sadly behind him. He glanced sideways and felt guilty, so he thought of giving Yong some explanation before he left the realm. "I'm going to leave the body behind, so take good care of it. I'm leaving this in your hands, since it's you. Make sure to take good care of whoever will be in my place." Yong was shocked to discover that Mu was only taking the soul and that it wasn't allowed. According to Yong, if the body died while the soul was still inside, the soul would be destroyed. But Mu wasn't worried about anything and promised Yong that he would be back soon. As he tried to enter the earth, Yong kept begging him not to continue. Mu shouted as he entered the earth, as he felt a lot of pressure. A few minutes earlier, a young man was holding a sword and smiling broadly, proclaiming that he had finally defeated the Demon King. Turned out it was just a game, and that game had just ended. The user of the young man's character was holding his cell phone and said that he easily became a god in another world with cheat abilities. So that's the end of Aaron in another world after all. Lucky him, he added. He is a 17-year-old nerdy boy named Lihu. He dropped his cell phone and said the game was fun. The cell phone broke as it fell to the ground. He was standing on the roof of a school building and said that he could now die without regrets. He was clenching his fists while trembling. He was covered in wounds all over his body. He suddenly jumped and bid farewell to this world. As he fell, he said, If there is a God, then God eats trash. He thought God was annoyed with him, so he hoped to be sent to another world. Blood splattered on his cell phone as it fell beside him. His hand was still moving. He screamed in pain, and it was revealed that Mu had already possessed Li Hu's body. Now, Li Hu's soul was transported to another world, as he wished. He was sweating as there was a lot of confusion in his head. He found himself standing in front of a giant dragon. Sweat was pouring continuously, and he and the dragon asked each other's identity. Before Li Hu fell, Mu had already possessed his weak body, which meant that Mu was aware that he was falling. The glasses fell from his eyes. He was panicking upon learning that he was falling, but then it was too late to do anything since he had already crashed into the ground. He tried to get up but was struggling. He was lying in his own blood and realized that he was having involuntary muscle spasms. These are muscles that move without conscious control. The heart and muscles of the internal organs are examples of involuntary muscles. Mu had spent 3 million years training his physical body. He had reached the peak of understanding the human form. He could consciously control every part of his body and blood vessels, and even the involuntary muscles were no exception. Mu regained his breath as he regained consciousness. He was holding his chest while thinking that he had repaired the borrowed body's heart by moving the blood vessels and managing to stop the bleeding. Slowly, he got up, recalling that it had been a long time since he had bled so much. Suddenly, he smiled and said to himself that coming to this world was undoubtedly the right choice. He then reviewed Li Hu's memories and immediately headed to his house, leaving the broken glasses on the ground. He started walking upside down, believing that this would help him find Li Hu's home faster. After some time, he arrived at Li Hu's house. He spent an hour searching through the young man's memories and managed to locate the place. He discovered that Li Hu had only one male relative, but he lived far away and that he lived alone. Basically, Li Hu was poor and miserable. His occupation involved attending a place called school. Mu also discovered that at school there was someone who always picked fights with Li Hu. He became excited upon learning this, since he had come to this world precisely in search of fights. He punched the air and said that he could finally jump straight into a fight. However, he felt a lot of pain in his arm and concluded that it was because of the long time he spent walking upside down. His arm trembled with pain, and he realized that Li Hu's body wasn't used to using its muscles, which caused muscle soreness. Despite this, Mu thought the sensation was exciting, as it had been 1,000 years since he had felt muscle soreness. The next day, teachers and police officers at the school were intrigued by the blood found on the ground at the place where Li Hu fell. Mu arrived early at school and ignored all the commotion. He entered the building as if nothing had happened and went straight to the classroom where he found the bully. Upon opening the sliding door, he accidentally hit his own face and entered holding his sore face. He went straight to the bully. "Hey, idiot Li Hu, what are you doing?" the bully asked. Mu stared furiously, approaching and stopping in front of him. "It was you, wasn't it?" he asked. The bully thought Li Hu had gone crazy and asked about the glasses, since he wasn't wearing them. The bully punched Mu in the face and mocked, asking if he had sold the glasses, saying that without them he was an even easier target than a grandmother with blood running down his mouth. Mu remained motionless for a moment. He had his own rules for fighting. A fight only starts when all parties involved demonstrate a willingness to fight. Therefore, the key is in the opponent's intention, which he confirms with the first blow. Upon seeing the bully's attack, Mu smiled, finally ready to fight. The bully, seeing him laughing, said that he was crazy. Mu then clenched his fist and punched the bully directly in the face. However, he felt pain in his arm again, muscle soreness. But still, he laughed, finding the sensation refreshing. As the fight progressed, a teacher appeared and tried to scold them but was ignored. The bully, angered by being hit, advanced against Mu, who tried to defend himself but realized that Li Hu's body was in terrible condition. He activated his third and fourth magic, but both failed due to a lack of earth mana. The bully's fist hit Mu's face, who, without options, used his head to block the attack. The sound of the bully's hand bones cracking echoed, making him scream in pain. Mu smiled, satisfied with the result, and decided to make another attack before the bully recovered. He hit the bully's solar plexus with his head, causing more screams. As a final blow, he headbutted his opponent's chin, who fell to his knees and fainted. The students in the room recorded everything with their cell phones, surprised to see Lee-hoo defeat the bully. Many were confused, as they remembered that Lee-hoo had been beaten up the day before. After the fight, Moo felt the throbbing pain in the hit areas and the metallic taste of blood in his mouth. He laughed loudly, saying to himself that it was exactly what he was looking for. He thanked the bully for the combat, and to mark the moment, he bit the bully's ear, tearing off a piece. He spat the piece of ear on the floor to the shock of his classmates, who called him crazy. Moo declared that it had been a long time since he had such a fun fight. He always left a mark on the opponents who provided a good fight, calling them Moo's toys. However, on Earth, this would be seen completely differently. The news about Lee-hoo's fight spread throughout the school, causing astonishment, especially because the bully had to be taken to the hospital. Moo watched and found it interesting to see a mobile emergency service. When the ambulance left, Moo nodded and said, "Let's meet again." At the same time, the homeroom teacher was already beside him. The man was furious, ordering Moo to go to the teacher's room. When they arrived, the teacher was angry and asking Moo if he had lost his mind. The teacher seemed about to hit Moo with so much anger, and Moo was excited, waiting to be hit. However, the teacher gave up and said that there was no reason to talk to students like him. He told Moo to call his parents and bring them to school, then gave permission for Moo to leave early, asking him not to cause any more problems. Moo was smiling but confused about why the teacher didn't hit him. While walking through the streets towards his house, he still didn't understand what the teacher meant by leaving early. To him, it should mean returning to base. His hand trembled as he looked at it and said that it needed time to recover from the damage. He felt lucky to have been released early. He also believed that there was much to be done if he wanted to continue fighting with the fragile body he possessed. Furthermore, Moo hoped to be able to use his mana in this world. Energy beyond humanity is called mana. In some places it's called chi or chakra, but most gods call it mana. It's the life force that exists in all of nature. Mana allows humans to become hunters in some worlds and mages in others. But on Earth, mana doesn't exist, so magic and abilities can't be used. Moo tried to use it again but without success and concluded that he needed to adapt and fight without his third and fourth abilities. He lay down on his bed and closed his eyes, determined to temporarily return to his world to recover. In a matter of seconds, he appeared in the realm. He was shocked to see Lee-hoo's soul playing with Yong. Lee-hoo came down from the dragon and asked Moo to hand Yong over to him. "You called him to send me to another world. Since you're at it, hand him over to me too," Lu said, secretly thinking that he could dominate the other world with a dragon by his side. Moo activated his magic power and a gigantic hand appeared. He told Lu that he was a very strange guy. Then he wrapped the big hand around Lee-hoo's body, and Lee-hoo began to struggle and asked what Moo was doing. Moo just turned around and replied that he was going to send Lu to another world. They arrived at Lucifer's dormitory, the second in rank. Lucifer was standing and felt someone approaching. He turned his head and said, "Not Jang." Then Yong replied that he hadn't even said anything yet. Moo proclaimed, "Yes," and pointed to Lee-hoo, ordering Lucifer to open the gate, because he had decided to send Jang to another world. "Why did you decide that?" Lucifer asked. Moo replied confidently that he was stronger and told Lucifer that if he had any problems, he could face him whenever he wanted. Lucifer was trembling with rage, thinking that Moo was a brute idiot who only had strength. Moo approached and told Lucifer to get out of the way so that he could do the work himself. Moo touched the domain while Lucifer reminded him that interfering in the domain of other gods was taboo among the gods, and if the god responsible wasn't there and someone touched a barrier, it would be activated. The domain was shattered by Moo, and Lucifer was speechless. "Why haven't you ever tried it, you lazy bum?" Moo said. Lucifer replied that that's how the laws of the world worked. Moo ignored him and called Lee-hoo. He ordered Lu to enter, but he was confused. Moo then crossed his arms and said, "Didn't you say you wanted to go? This is the other world." Lu asked about the dragon, but Mu told him to find one in the other world because Yong belonged to him. Li Hu was about to reveal his intention to dominate the other world, but Mu pushed him and proclaimed that the children of today don't want to work for what they want. He then walked away, telling Lucifer to take good care of Liru. Lucifer was furious. He was trembling with rage, but he didn't react. Lucifer originally came from his domain, the planet Elmer. He was known as the first demon king and, okay, here's the English translation of the provided text, adjusted for a US audience and typical YouTube video style. Lucifer, arrogant his entire life, challenged the entity known as God. Driven by ambition, he killed God and seized the throne. He then defeated other gods to claim the supreme throne, becoming the absolute God of gods, invincible, supreme, legendary, unique, catastrophic, mythic, infinite, transcendent, and always magnificent, until Mu appeared. This was the reason Lucifer was so angry with Mu, and of course he still planned to defeat him when the time was right. Meanwhile, as Mo and Jang headed back to base, a one-eyed demonic creature stalked them. At the same time, back on Earth, Liru was seething with rage, sitting in a hospital bed. Fueled by fury, he vowed to kill Lu. He thinks he's tough, but he's finished, he muttered. He grabbed his phone and decided to call someone named Shul. Elsewhere, a guy was busy with his boxing training. This was Wak Chio, the champion of the youth middleweight boxing division of the 71st National Sports Festival. Wak stopped training the moment he heard his phone ringing. He turned his head and asked who was calling. Another man approached and said it was his phone ringing. He answered and said, "Yo, what's up?" It was Wak Chio. He had 2 years of boxing experience and 14 sparring sessions. "Remember you said your phone screen was cracked? You need a new one?" the caller said. Wak was confused for a moment but then smiled suddenly and told the caller to get straight to the point. The next day, the school bully went to class. As soon as he walked in, he overheard students talking about how he got beat up after provoking others. He was trembling with rage, hearing people mocking him for being a weakling. Suddenly, he threw his backpack on the ground and shouted furiously, "You guys are whispering loud enough for me to hear. You cowards! If you have a problem, face me head-on." A girl, the class president, stood up, looking directly at the bully, and told him to stop, sit down, or leave. The bully was furious with her and asked if she'd lost her mind. He grabbed a chair and asked if she wanted to die. "Professor!" A large man entered the room and asked what was going on. He went to the board and asked the class president why she was standing. The class president sat down again and replied that it was nothing. "Class president, after class today? Come see me for a moment," the professor said. The girl asked why. Later, after class, the class president went to the professor to find out the reason for the private talk. She found out that the professor wanted her to check on Lu, since he hadn't been attending classes and wasn't answering his phone. He then bid her farewell and promised that he would write an excellent letter of recommendation for her senior year. The girl was annoyed but didn't refuse, as she had no choice. After a few minutes, she arrived at Liru's class. She tried knocking on the door, but no one answered. She decided to enter and found Liru lying upside down. Liru's eyes were white, and his mouth was open, which made the girl think he was already dead. The class president called 911 and took Liru to the hospital. Liru's body was lying in a hospital bed, and after an hour, Mu finally returned to Liru's body and was shocked to find himself in a different place. He didn't notice that the class president was sitting next to him. Then he saw the 4 drip in his wrist. He didn't know what it was, but he was sure that something was entering directly into his vein and feeding his body. He realized it wasn't magic, but he was impressed with the effect. Suddenly, he smiled as he realized that Earth had interesting things. The class president thought he was crazy for laughing suddenly. She then stood up and said, "The head professor sent me to come back to school. He asked me to find you first. He keeps insisting. So, I'm going to go." Mu got up and stared at the girl, thinking that if she was the one who had helped with his recovery. The girl was about to leave, but Mu said he had a question. She allowed him to ask but told him to be quick because she was in a hurry. Mu realized that he didn't know much about Earth and needed more information, so he decided to ask the girl where he could train his body, since he knew that getting stronger was the first step. While asking, he removed the 4 drip from his wrist. The girl looked at him and asked if he had money to pay later. That afternoon, Mu went to the park to start his training. It was the place the class president had suggested. Since Mu said he had no money, Mu had already been training for an hour and felt satisfied. He remembered the girl saying that this place was called a seinen park. He was impressed to see such professional training equipment, since he didn't have those things 4,000 years ago. Back then, he was only rolling stones, climbing cliffs, and digging holes, simple and primitive methods of training. While practicing with the leg equipment and trying to figure out how to use it right, someone hit him in the back with a small rock. When he turned his head back, he saw that it was the school bully, along with another guy who was Wak Chio. "I looked for you all over the neighborhood. Why the hell are you here?" the bully said. Mu picked up the rock and asked who threw it at him. The bully replied that it was him. He was confident that he could now get revenge with the help of his cousin. He kept talking, but Mu interrupted with a punch to the face without warning. The bully fell to the ground instantly and screamed in agony. Mu was smiling, knowing he made a preemptive strike. At the same time, in the divine realm, Yong gathered the gods for a habitual meeting. Yong was sweating and nervous. He held a paper and declared the start of the meeting. He said that he would transmit the message from his lord, Mu. Before he could say the words, Lucifer called attention to himself. Lucifer's aura was dark. He was furious as he asked Jang if he was doing all right. Jang, in panic, replied that he hadn't done anything and that he would only deliver the message from his lord and leave. Jang then raised the paper and read. Mu said, "As always, if you find someone worthy to fight, inform me." That was all. Everyone was momentarily silent, but Lucifer suddenly punched the table, which cracked. "What is the purpose of this? I'm already annoyed with these useless meetings, and now he doesn't even bother to show up. Are we really okay with this?" he said. Still, there was no response from the other gods. Lucifer was furious. Occupying the 3rd position in the divine realm, the divine archer, Susu, said, "This meeting should ensure the stability of the world. When an anomaly arises that the god of earth cannot handle, we must intervene and resolve it. But his not appearing is simply disappointing." Lucifer stood up furiously and declared that the real problem was that maintaining the world seemed like just another game for Mu, and he feared that the entire system could collapse because of Mu's reckless actions. He added that the worst of all was that Mu's so-called solutions only made things worse. He looked at Cyclops next to him and recalled what happened to Cyclops' planets 1,000 years before. The god of Cyclops occupies the 9th position in the divine realm. His anger returned as he recalled what happened at that time. 1,000 years ago, Cyclops' planet was attacked by the void creature, Scaff. While Scaff was attacking the planet, Mu appeared, but he was drunk, which gave Scaff the advantage to devour part of the planet. According to Lucifer, if they had worked together, they could have minimized the damage. He was trembling with rage as he proclaimed that he couldn't stand Mu destroying things anymore. To him, Mu wasn't fit to be a god. Ian was irritated to hear this, but of course he couldn't do anything. He almost cried as he questioned why he had to endure this trial and hoped that his lord, Mu, would return soon. Back at the park, Liru's bully was furious with Mu for hitting him. "Do you know who my cousin is? He's a boxer. Idiot. You're finished," he said. Guak Chio then said to Mu, "You have fast hands. What sport do you play?" Mu smiled as he replied that he didn't play sports, but he fought. Guak Chio spat out his chewing gum and said that this looked like some kind of middle school syndrome. He then prepared his fists and challenged Mu to a fight. He punched Mu directly in the face, and there was a bit of smoke due to the force of the blow. However, he was confused. The moment he punched him, he realized that Mu observed the blow until the end but deliberately didn't dodge. He had no idea that Mu never dodged. Preemptive close combat is his specialty. Mu asked, "Is this how you fight?" Wak was perplexed. Mu imitated his fist position and asked if he was doing it right. Wak then smiled, thinking that Mu was copying clumsily. Mu threw a punch and Whack used his hand to block the attack. Damn! What kind of punch was that? Whack asked, feeling a surreal force. So, that's how it's done? Mu asked with a big smile. At the moment of impact, he tensed his arm muscles to the maximum. His arm was screaming in pain, but he chose to ignore it because he felt incredible. He was excited to the point of drooling. He had never felt this kind of strength from the weaklings who broke at the slightest touch. Suddenly, he pulled out his belt and wrapped it around his wrist. He told himself that he should take good care of the body he possessed. Even during a fight, for now, he could use the belt as temporary hand armor, like an ancient Greek boxing strap made of tanned cow leather, for meters long. What the heck, man? You said you'd fight fair. Whack then said to the bully. Whack was annoyed with him and told him to shut up and stay out of it. He smiled slightly and said, "You really think you can win like this?" He then started punching Mu several times while saying that Mu's guard was a total joke. His punches were fast and precise but too predictable for Mu. As he punched, Mu watched how his muscles moved. This way, he could predict exactly where Whack was aiming. Guak Chio laughed and threw a strong punch, but Mu managed to block it with a fist. Whack was perplexed. He then screamed in agony as Mu watched. Mu smiled suddenly upon noticing Guak Chio, and the bully had hilarious reactions. He then hit Guak Chio's neck, who fainted instantly, shocking the other bully. The bully looked at Mu and saw his terrifying aura. "Now let's finish this," Mu said. But the bully was already sweating with fear. Mu walked towards the bully, who was begging him not to approach. Mu then thought that the bully no longer had the will to fight. "You won't fight if I admit defeat? Is this where it ends?" he added, making Whack think that his fight was over. Then Mu gave him a strong punch in the face. He screamed in pain while covering his face with his hands. Mu hit him several times without giving him a chance to speak. His face swelled, blood streamed from his nose, and he started crying in pain, but Mu didn't stop. Mu stopped in front of him and raised his knee, saying, "You're really relentless. You simply don't admit defeat." The bully was lying next to Guak Chio. He was too weak and was lucky that Mu let him go. Biting Guak's ear, before walking away, he watched Mu walking away while cursing in words. Meanwhile, Mu returned to Liru's room. He was sitting on the bed, thinking that he was having fun fighting. However, he realized that his body broke easily. He never imagined that his current muscles would tear so easily. He wanted to continue with that feeling, but he regretted that the flow was constantly interrupted. He closed his eyes while deciding to temporarily return to his original world to do what he had told Yong. Yong felt tremors while he was in the process. They stopped suddenly, and he felt nothing. So, he decided to open his eyes and found himself in the same place. He was confused about why it wasn't working. Back to the moment when Mu went to Elmer's domain, the god Lucifer. He left Lucifer trembling with rage while he went to meet Jong. He asked if he had a good trip to Earth. Mu then replied that he was very satisfied, just that his body was too weak. He crossed his arms while ordering Jong to get a magic orb of recovery as quickly as possible. The magic orb is an object that contains magic used in Elmer, the planet under Lucifer's command, or in other planets. They are common items on planets with abundant mana, but on Earth, they can only be obtained through divine blessings or whims, which is why few have been able to use them throughout human history, being considered gods by humans. On that occasion, Mu asked for the orb, and Yong promised to prepare it before the next trip. Mud descended Jong while he was asking about the regular meeting. Mu then took something inside his shorts and, while saying that he had already prepared, explained that Jong would complain a lot. It seemed that it was a letter. Then he went straight to planet Earth and touched it until his soul disappeared, leaving his body unconscious. During this time, the one-eyed demon witnessed everything, and Lucifer received the report. He didn't know what Mu was plotting but concluded that Mu had no plans to return for a while, since he didn't even attend the regular meeting. He was serious, but suddenly he laughed and said that that was a unique opportunity in 1,000 years. Lucifer then activated his magic, a type of vital taxidermy, and directed it at Yong. Yong went on alert. He immediately moved away and dodged each blow. "What are you doing?" This is a determination of war against the god of earth. Yong asked. Lucifer used his wings and returned. He then proclaimed that he would expel the god of earth from the seat of divinity. He declared that it would be a war. Upon hearing this, Jong then launched his compressed breath in Lucifer's direction. Lucifer reflected an attack, and the flames swirled around the domain and exploded. Susu at the same time launched his self-defense aura to protect them, but they were still affected by the explosion. Jong's polymorph release preferred his aura changed, but Lucifer wasn't scared and confidently said, "You're next, and after you, your master." Jong replied, "There won't be a next." Susu sighed with disappointment. He crossed his arms and said to both Jong and Lucifer that they weren't in the right atmosphere for a proper meeting. Lucifer attacked Jang using the same magic, and this time Jang was injured. Okay, here's the English translation of the text, adjusted for a US audience. So, S decided to leave, but Lucifer stopped her and asked which side she was on. S responded that it didn't matter to her, allowing Lucifer to mark her as neutral. Lucifer then ordered her to get out of the way and summoned the gods who opposed the war to come forward. He was confident he could handle the battle alone. Young asked if he really thought he could defeat the earth god. Lucifer smirked and replied, "You mean your master, who took the body of a weak human?" Jong was shocked that Lucifer knew this. Complacency in your strength and negligence in your vigilance only lead to this, Lucifer added. Yong became angry but couldn't do anything. He tried to attack Lucifer with his tail, but Lucifer calmly cut it off. Lucifer then proclaimed that he could still reach Earth as long as Jang was alive. He laughed and stated that he would destroy M on Earth, knowing he was in a weak body now. Jang was helpless, constantly hearing Lucifer's laughter. He trembled with rage, but of course he had no strength to stop him. On Earth, Wak Chio went to practice, shaking as he listened to his coach scold him for getting into a fight, even though the competition was coming up soon. "Seriously, don't come back until your arm is healed. Get out of my sight," the coach said angrily. Waka turned and left, blaming M for what happened. As he was about to leave, Kong Su arrived. Kong Su was confused to see his injuries. He asked Guak Chio what happened, and the latter stammered, trying to answer. Then, he had an idea to ask Kongu for help. He said that young people these days were scary. He explained that his cousin was being bullied, so he tried to intervene and talk to them. However, he was surrounded and beaten. He pretended to cry while mentioning that these young people left his arm and ear in a terrible state. But to his surprise, K. Exon simply walked past him normally, saying that he should have been more careful before the competition. K-Su also suggested that he do an extra sparring session instead of fighting. Wacko became angry, but his reaction changed the moment K-Chio spoke again. He was smiling, thinking that Khan hadn't noticed his crocodile tears. "Who exactly is this guy?" Conan asked back. M was confused about why he couldn't return to his original body. He sensed something strange and knew there was only one scenario in which this would happen: when the original body was damaged. He thought his body should be protected by Yan Yan, and even if it wasn't, he was sure there weren't many things that could damage his body. He suddenly froze when he realized that all the other gods might have teamed up to attack him. He then stood up with clenched fists, telling himself that he shouldn't waste any more time trembling with rage. He felt betrayed. He punched the pillow due to his anger, saying it had been a long time since those goddesses had challenged him, and of course, he wanted to face them again. He punched the pillow several times and murmured, "Please, fight when I am there." He stopped, but he was still angry. He calmed down and believed that Jang wasn't someone who would fall so easily. Even so, he couldn't just sit idly by, so he decided to do what he could for now. The next day, Mo went to the park early in the morning to exercise and focused on strengthening his muscles, especially those in his arms, using muscles he didn't normally use. He felt intense pain but felt good about it. He chuckled suddenly, causing other people nearby to walk past and think he was crazy. He flinched when he heard someone calling his name. Unfortunately, he fell to the ground and saw the class president next to him. She asked him why he wasn't going to school. Mu invited her to sit down and asked if he really needed to attend class. It's not exactly a place for physical training, is it? He asked. The woman sighed and asked what he wanted to do. Mu then replied that he wanted to get stronger, and that's why he was training. The woman then questioned why he wanted to get stronger, and he responded that he wanted to fight better since he was currently too weak to really fight. He explained that his body was completely untrained, so he needed to strengthen it. Furthermore, his arm was already damaged. Even though he had only participated in a few fights with strength training at the gym, he believed he could fight more. In addition, he was sure that fighting more would help his body move better. He talked about fighting for hours, which made the woman think he was insane. She wondered how she could get Leo back to school. Then, she had an idea and asked, "What's the point of training if there's no one to fight?" She said that he was just training alone so no one would challenge him. She suggested that he should meet people, create some conflicts, and then fight. Then, she stood up, saying that he should start going to school the next day and not let this become a problem for her. Afterward, she left, and Mu watched from afar, realizing that she was right. He concluded that those guys he fought the first time probably wouldn't show up again, so he needed to find strong opponents on his own. Of course, he believed that looking for someone to fight while waiting for his body to recover didn't seem like a bad idea. He stood up and proclaimed, "I should try going to that place called school starting tomorrow." He had no idea that someone was behind him and said, "Second year, Liru, right? Isn't that the guy?" Mu then smiled, thinking it would be another fight. He turned his head and saw the guy's fist coming toward him. As he saw it, he said, "Earth is the best place." At 15, Xo began to excel at boxing. Kan Chio's sister, who was a promising beginner ballerina, had a stalker. The stalker's obsession became increasingly severe and eventually crossed the line. The stalker tried to assault the young woman, but Kan Chio managed to prevent the crime. Because he had intervened too early, the criminal didn't receive due punishment. The obsession of the one who had failed once only grew stronger and became more dangerous. This time, too, Xo managed to prevent the crime. He wasn't as fast as before, and the swan's wings were broken. After that, he no longer trusted the law. He decided to do what the law couldn't. He secretly began to perform vigilante activities every night. He made those who showed signs of becoming criminals pay the price in advance. For him, fighting was judgment, and he was the one standing in front of Mu. He punched Mu in the face, but Mu felt it was light, so he concluded that the guy was testing him. Mucus and blood dripped from his nose. He smiled at the fact that Ko was attacking, which meant he was challenging him to a battle. He felt lucky to have found a fight after thinking it would be difficult to find one for so long. "Why are you still going around hitting people? Do you want to become a thug or something?" Kan Chio asked. Mu then said that he wasn't a fan of small talk. Mu challenged him to fight immediately, and seeing his bravery only made Kong Exo angrier. Kong Exo advanced on him, saying, "Then come on!" Hancho launched several punches, but Mu easily dodged them with a smile. Hano admitted that Mu was dodging well, so he decided to block Mu's direct field of vision. His fist hit Mu, but he was surprised when Mu was still able to block again. Hong Shou provoked Mu for continuing to block anyway. Mu continued to block the punches, and Kong Exo became irritated that he only attacked the already injured spots. This time, Kong Shou managed to hit his waist, and Mu felt the pain. He backed away while Kanu concluded that his arm was no longer responding because he hadn't been able to block the last punch. "No matter how injured you are, the judge doesn't show mercy," Kong Chio proclaimed. Even so, Mu continued to smile while holding his waist. He was trembling in pain, and seeing him smile like a madman without saying a word confused Kong Su. Furthermore, his smile only awakened more anger. And Konkyo watched him while thinking that this guy couldn't be defeated, at least not now. But of course, that didn't mean he couldn't take advantage of the opportunity to fight. He said to himself that he couldn't win just by enjoying the fight. He was cautious, calm, and tried not to smile. He couldn't always win. Even if it was something insignificant, it was still fun for him, but he wanted to win. So, he always decided to calm his emotions and assess the enemy calmly. The more he thought and fought with his head, the stronger he became. Nothing suppressed his emotions as much as possible to become stronger. Despite this, he couldn't contain the joy of escaping. So, when he wanted to win, he suppressed his emotions even further. He tried to look annoyed. By doing this, he made Kong-shu feel insulted and gave him more reasons to awaken his anger to the fullest. Kong-cho clenched his fist. He was trembling and advanced on Mu, asking if he was kidding. Even so, Mu showed the same facial expression. Kong-su tried to punch him again, but he managed to avoid it. His expression became darker. He dug his shoes into the ground, and kicked small fragments of rocks flew towards Kong-su. Kong-su then proclaimed that throwing dirt in someone's eyes was something that only an impotent criminal would do. Mu's head was down, but when he looked back at Xo, his reaction was still the same, which irritated Kong Exo, now extremely furious. Kong Exo continues attacking Mu, but Mu still dodges. Kong Sho appeared behind Mu at high speed and delivered a punch that Mu easily avoided. Mu smiled at seeing Kong Sho also aiming at his chin. Barehanded fights existed in the previous world as well. If there was a difference between the two guys he faced before, it was that the fights were much more defensive. The reason for this was the ground. The soil was full of variables, making it difficult to fight while moving rigorously. Perhaps the evolution of flat terrains and footwear has allowed today's fighters to become more aggressive with aggressive tendencies, and knowing exactly where to aim makes it easier to guide the opponent's movements. That's why Mo managed to dodge every time. In the end, if he makes the enemy move more, he believes that the chances of the variables that configure Trent occurring increase. When that brief opening appears, he sees it as a chance to hit the vital point. When he was pre to punch, he noticed something in his arm. Even so, he continued delivering the blow. His arm trembled, and he felt that it wasn't responding. So, he tried to use his elbow as a resource. Case's eye protector broke a little. He also attacked Mu, and Mu laughed at thinking that Xo had missed. But he ended up discovering that Khan arrived, used the weapon, and managed to hit Mu's leg. When Mu realized this, he fell to the ground instantly in pain. "This is fun for you. You'll probably continue doing the same thing and laughing like that in the future too," said Kel. He dropped his weapon and decided to declare that he would ensure that Mu wouldn't laugh anymore. Mu concludes that he lost this time. He smiled at remembering that it had been almost 4,000 years since his last defeat. Suddenly, something flew towards Kei-sho and ricocheted behind a tree. Kei-sho hesitated, thinking that Mu had someone with him. Someone called Mu, addressing him as master. Kansu began to sweat, putting on his jacket immediately, and fled. The person who called Mu was next to him and called him again. Mu turned his head slowly and was surprised to see a dragon cub just like Yong. "You're Yong?" he asked. Previously, Mu's body was trapped inside a barrier by Lucifer. Lucifer smiled, certain that Mu couldn't return to his body again, since his barrier was an isolated space, and the soul couldn't enter. He decided to open the barrier from Earth, but before that, he gave Jang a chance to cooperate, promising him the position of Earth God if he gave it to him. Jang gave an answer, but Lucifer couldn't understand. Irritated, Lucifer said, "What are you saying? Speak up. I can't hear anything with that huge size of yours." Jang then asked if there wasn't an attack capable of crossing the barrier when it was isolated. Lucifer confirmed that he was right and said that he should accept the offer and cooperate. However, Lucifer was confused to hear Yang proclaim that it was good to know that attacks wouldn't work on the barrier. Then, he noticed a golden light emerge. Turns out that Yong used his massive blast. Lucifer became irritated, realizing that it was too dangerous. But before he could do anything, Zhang's power exploded. Yong then fled, transforming into a small dragon. He ran towards Earth to inform Mu about the situation. Lucifer tried to chase him, furiously shouting that he would reduce him and Mu to dust. Lucifer released his weapon and aimed at Zhang. Yong ran to Earth as fast as possible and was lucky because Lucifer missed the shot. He managed to enter Earth and flew directly to where Mo was fighting. Yong flew straight into Kongshu's face and hit him unintentionally. Now they were at Li's house, and Yong explained everything and apologized to Mu. Mu was silent. He was furious with Lucifer and wanted to face him again. From a furious expression, Mo suddenly broke into a big smile. His face was flushed with excitement, believing that Lucifer was pretending that he wouldn't fight anymore. But in reality, he was even more ready to fight. He stood up and punched the air, proclaiming that he needed to get stronger and as quickly as possible to fight with Li's body. However, he felt intense pain in his wrist. Both of his arms were trembling, and he concluded that he couldn't use them for a while. "That pace, did you bring it?" he asked. Yong was sweating, certain that Mu was referring to the magic orb. So, he smiled slightly and replied, "Of course I brought it." It turns out that he hid the orb in his stomach, forced it out of his mouth and almost cried while doing so. The orb was red, and according to Zhang, it was a dragon bloodstone infused with a one-time use healing spell. It was a stone formed from the hardened blood of a dragon. Yong regretted not bringing more because he never expected things to happen this way. Mu then took the magic orb and proc that it would be enough for him. He began to refine just holding the orby. Okay, here's the translated text, adjusted for a more natural English flow. The text slowly dissipated, and M's injuries healed instantly, one by one. Wow, this stuff is really good, he exclaimed. I'll see if they're selling it at the pharmacy. Goodbye, Dipperona. Goodbye, Doflex. I'm only using dragon blood from now on. Mu was surprised by the effect. He was sure this orb wasn't just a simple healing spell. His muscles felt more sensitive. He deduced that the orb was also a body enhancement spell. It's like a pre-workout, but magic. I just don't know if they had gyms in the medieval era. Yong smiled and proudly stated that he had infused his own magic into the dragon bloodstone and put a lot of effort into it. Now there was still a little left in the orb. Mu concluded that he hadn't used much mana since it was a human body, and believed it could be used one more time. He tossed it to Zhang and told him to use it. Zhang caught it, swallowed it to hide it in his belly, and save it for future use. The next day, a lizard was playing with someone's index finger. It belonged to Mu's class president. The lizard was her pet. She called him Dooley. The girl cooed just looking at her pet, proclaiming that he was cute. She wished her pet could talk so they could at least chat and play together every day. She put her pet back in the aquarium and left the room, saying, "Be quiet and behave. I'll see you after school." At school, the bully Lou was covered in bandages. He was sitting, writing a bunch of paperwork. At that moment, he was devastated, thinking that being a bully never really suited him. Now he decided to just study instead of messing with students. As he was writing, the door burst open, startling him. Mu entered and stared at the bully. "You want a fight?" But the class president appeared and said he had shown up today, so Mu looked at her and responded that he was convinced by what he was told, which was to look for someone to fight. He smiled ironically, making the girl wonder if he wasn't plotting something. "And now, who can help me?" she thought, but realized that the only hero available was Mu himself. "Yeah, good luck," was all she said. Throughout the school day, the bully Lu just sat by the window. On the other hand, Guakchio was inside the classroom on the floor below Lu's room. A red-haired girl was with him, asking if he had heard the news about the neutralization of the second year. His class had already been dismissed. As they left, the girl informed Guakchio that there was a boy in the second year who was being bullied. Wakel was silent for a moment. After a few seconds, he asked if this neutralization of the second year just defeated a bully. The girl replied that yes, and he even tore off an ear. That's why they started calling him neutralization. Wacko then remembered what happened with Kongcho and concluded that the one they called neutralization in the second year was who he fought the day before. He crossed his arms and gritted his teeth. He was furious to think that Keiichio lied to him, because he really believed that Keiichio had just been beaten for no reason. He admitted to himself that he hit the wrong guy for no reason, and only gave him a few punches, and some light taps and affection using a brick. He didn't know that Mu was behind him. Mu was disappointed that he hadn't fought today. He noticed that people in the classroom were just doodling with their fingers and no one wanted to fight. Man, the world is kind of boring, isn't it? No one wants to get into a brawl like in the old days. Now he decided to just train in the sand arena. As he was walking, he noticed Gusho in front of him. The arm seemed familiar. He was sure that the size and positioning of the muscle were the same as the guy he fought the day before. Being sure, he suddenly shouted, "Hey, it's that guy from yesterday." Was slowly turned his head and saw Mu advancing towards him with a wide smile. A wide smile, but with the look of someone who's going to beat me up again. "Today's the day I'm done for." Wacko ran as fast as he could. He was nervous, thinking that Mu was after him because he knew it was him. He was confused how Mu would know since he was so well covered with a mask and glasses. Mu was excited, trying to catch up to him, while Guaksha wondered if Mu was trying to report him to the police. Now he decided to try to lose him for now. He turned right, and Mu still followed his path with excitement. However, when he was about to turn, he noticed that Guakchio had disappeared. What the heck? Did the guy activate ghost mode? This is a perfect situation for a fight, he murmured. At the same time, Zhang popped out from inside Mu's clothing. "Are you looking for that guy from yesterday? The jerk who dared to challenge my master?" Zhang said. "Luckily, I smelled a strong masculine scent when I bumped into Guaksha yesterday, and I believe I can find him by following the scent." He jumped to the ground, but no one blocked his path. He then stood up and checked who it was. It turned out to be the class president. She was looking at Zhang, and as always, blushed because of his cuteness. "Get out of the way," Yong said. The girl picked him up and held him with both hands, and Jong was speechless for a moment. The girl lifted Jong. He became hysterical with rage, asking what she was doing. "Do you know who I am?" he said, irritated by the fact that he couldn't use magic in this world. He didn't realize that this was the first time the girl had seen a talking lizard. Man, the lizard is having more success than many romance novel protagonists out there. She never expected something like Jong to exist. She started sweating while looking at Jong. She thought that Jong and her pet Dooley had a similar cuteness, but instantly realized that Jong was cuter than Dooley. Dooley, hearing this, thought, "Man, major betrayal." While she was thinking about this, Jong took the chance to escape. He immediately ran to his master Mu and apologized for not being able to fight since he was now powerless. The class president stares at Mu and looks back at Jong while taking a step forward. "Is this thing your friend, by any chance?" Mu then looked at Jong and replied to the girl that she could call him a friend. A very obedient friend. The class president, Kim Jin, is 17 years old, and at that moment, she felt jealous of Mu for having a talking lizard. "Careful, Mu. This is how fanfics start." Mu was confused by her reaction, then suddenly had an idea and moved his leg forward. Yong was startled, and Mu then asked Eugene if she wanted to borrow his pet. Yong became nervous upon hearing that Mu was okay with letting him be lent to another person. Eugene, in turn, was surprised. Meanwhile, Eugene arrives home, and she is with Yong. They were in her room, and she was just watching Yong, wondering if he was mad at her earlier. Mu picked up Jong and informed her that he was looking for someone and that if she helped him, he would be willing to let her borrow Yong. Of course, Eugene immediately agreed without further ado. Mu then threw Yong to the girl, and Yong landed on Eugene's head. Mu then turned and said, "Stay with them for a while and come back alone." Yong stuttered, asking Mu where he was going. Mu smiled while looking at his clenched fist. He then replied that he was going to Sansajang. In the present, Jong was in front of Yuan and introduced himself. He informed the girl that he was the secretary who assists Mu and extended his arm to shake her hand while saying that from now on, she should actively cooperate with him exactly as his master Mu instructed. Eugene didn't say anything, just stared at Mu for a few seconds. She held her chest upon feeling something towards Yong. She then extended her hand and shook Yong's while asking if he was referring to how his master. Didn't wait for an answer because she was sure that she was right. "Right, then I'll help you guys. Believe it or not, I'm the class president," she said. But Yong showed that he didn't understand. She then explained that class president means leader of the class. She also proudly added that she is the first in the class. Because of this, Jong smiled and understood why Mu trusted him. But she hesitated and asked if that meant that his master wasn't the leader. Eugene then stated that Li Hu wasn't in the highest position in the class. "What?" Jong shouted, almost having a heart attack in the style of Su Madruga. The girl and her pet Dooley were startled when Jong shouted. He proclaimed that his master was the strongest, so he couldn't believe that he wouldn't be part of the ranking. "If you are the leader of the class, then the master must be the leader of the earth," he added with his hands on his waist. He then told the girl that he now understood clearly and wanted her to do her best to ensure his master became the strongest. He became irritated when Eugen agreed, but with a condition. He should come visit her house frequently. Jong smiled upon realizing that this would work out because he also planned to use the girl to gather information about the earth. "Sounds great for the master. This is nothing," he replied. He smiled, thinking that there was no need for Mu to worry since he was now there, willing to help him regain the title of strongest. At that moment, Jong was in his training field. He trained his muscles and was pleased to realize that they had improved. He clenched his fist and declared that there was now a physical enhancement and that his torn muscles had recovered, which means he had become even stronger. If he gets stronger than this, Marvel can already hire him for the next Avengers movie. He concluded that maybe he could push himself a little more at this level. He swung his arm and punched the metal right in front of him. After that, he blew on his fist, smiled broadly, and said that he was satisfied with what happened with that punch. He suddenly stopped upon wondering if the guy he fought the day before wouldn't show up today, but soon forgot about it upon deducing that he could probably find him since he now knew that he studied at the same school. He then left, leaving the metal dented by the punch, and was going home. His sweat was running straight in the direction of Yong. Yong was sitting on Yuan's shoulder while she was shopping online for Lu. While finalizing the purchase, Yong smelled his master. He immediately jumped up and stood by the window, thanked the girl, and promised to drop by frequently. He went to the roof and jumped upon seeing his master. He landed on the store sign and jumped onto Mu's shoulder. He smiled while informing Mu that he had totally managed to conquer Jin. At the same time, someone was fighting in his nearby alley. Mu replied to Yong that Eugene would also be loyal to him as his subordinate. Yong stopped when he smelled the familiar scent. He turned around while warning Mu about it. Mu then stopped walking. At the same time, the person who had been beaten in the alley recognized who attacked him. The aggressor was wearing a blue jacket, holding an ice shield, and was armed. He kicked the fallen man and declared that criminals talk too much. It was evident that it was Wacko. At that moment, Mu was behind him and said, "Found you."